Hey folks, welcome to the Salty Seaman. Another Tales from the Fleet. Uh, Last one was a bit long. I know it was a conversation between me and a shipmate of mine from my first boat. Covered a lot of different topics, going all over the place over actually probably about 6 years. But this one will get back on track of the basically my storyline coming in here in my first year on the Blue Ridge. Now, one of the things I wanted to cover a little bit is when you're overseas in the military, things drastically change from home. That if you only serve stateside, you probably wouldn't. Obviously being in the military stateside changes things, but it's a real big difference overseas. And a lot of it, I'd say, is just the comforts of home. You can't quite get them all, especially back in the '90s. Looking at it basically right before the internet hit. I think like stuff like Amazon was coming out. I think like Amazon was created like right when I left. There was no there really was no internet shopping back then. There was no file sharing. There was no, a lot of things I think overseas guys would take for granted now. And I think one of the bigger things here is like, for me, it was, how much I didn't miss a lot of it. Once things that are basically hobbies, if you find a worthwhile hobby to overtake what was you were previously doing, you don't seem to miss them as much. Now, as a teen in Arkansas in the '90s, I had my main hobbies. Nothing particularly good, kind of junky. It was, I watched television, I played video games, I listened to music, especially the hard rock metal variety. I was super into it. I, read comic books and books. Books were usually Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and a lot of different fantasy stuff, sci-fi. That's kind of my forte, the fantastical. Comic books, about a little bit of everything, but of course, a big superhero comic guy. Video games, about anything but sports titles. Never was a big fan of sports titles. And TV, regular sitcoms, some dramas. Like I'm a big Beavis and Butthead fan on MTV. At that point, I was a wrestling fan, so I think by the end of high school, I actually kind of lessened on that. But it was something I watched on a kind of normal basis. And and let's start with TV when you're overseas. You get basically what AFN shows you, other than the Japanese channels, and there's an English channel called Star TV, and they show stuff. But for the most part, yeah, you catch what you catch when you can. And it never seemed like a big deal. Like I wasn't like forlorn or sad. I was missing my TV shows. I mean, really, I haven't. Since boot camp, I really hadn't been keeping up regularly, just because of the way my life was, and just not having a regular TV in like our place to have a TV. So didn't really miss that. Video games, first half I was there, yes. Like I don't think I played any essentially. I didn't bring a console because I didn't think there was a place to play it, and of course in the ship, tons of guys had consoles. So I kind of missed the beginning of PlayStation 1 in '64 era. But I watched a lot of guys play them, Mario Sunshine, stuff like that. And it was when basically Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII came out. It was like, okay, I have to get a PlayStation. It's like, I need to play these games. But I had a good 2.5, 3 year layoff not really playing video games. I think I brought my old Game Boy with me, but that was like, Tetris when I was bored. Comic books, again, hard to get. The base bookstore at the time was a separate bookstore, sold basically the bare newsstand, and it was essentially when you went to Australia where you get English comic books, because you can't get them out in town. And just like all the stuff I'm talking about, it's just stuff not out in town. The one thing that was different was music. I kept up buying CDs. And being big into my music was pretty easy because Japan just has did have the most amazing CD stores, record stores. You know, you could find a lot of stuff you couldn't even find in the States. Pricey to a degree, but not much more of a markup than anything else in Japan. But I mean, one of my main new hobbies, you know, especially once I broke up with the girl from the ship, was chasing girls. I mean, that was just that that filled whatever hole in my heart all that left me. You know, no books. I would say, but there was a bookstore, so like my regular book buying didn't really get affected either. But yeah, just, you know, going out with my friends and always on the hunt for girls, as you know, 19, 20-year-olds are to do at the time. I mean, it just occupied a lot of my waking moments from the ship. At this point, you know, we had for about a month the senior chief took over because of our Divo and the sex on the beach incident I've described before. And then we got a warrant officer, Hayes. He was a submariner, former yeoman chief, made warrant, moved him off the subs. Half Filipino. I believe his dad was an American sailor. And he was raised between Manila and San Diego, essentially. And he had an odd accent. Like, it wasn't quite Filipino, and it wasn't quite San Diegan. It was just kind of his own accent. You know, he was an interesting dude. He had quite a turn of phrase to use every once in a while. You know, just once described something being the size of 2 shoeboxes, which I'll always take to my grave. It's hilarious as one of the greatest ways to describe the size of something. You know, and as for me, you know, just it was kind of getting settled into the idea, you know, after boot camp and A school, you know, it's temporary. You're always looking forward to the next and bigger thing. And the ship, at some point you realize, you know, you're not going anywhere for a while. And even though the operational movements and tempo and everything keeps things in a bit of flux, it is essentially your home. And you're not going anywhere for a while. You kind of like try to start settling in instead of feeling less temporary, I'd say, and feeling more, you know, permanent attachment. And we were... They said that, I think I last left off, we were supposed to do this thing called OPI, and well, the inspectors came on board, and our captain had the right to refuse the first year and move to the second year, and he did that because he didn't feel the ship was ready. Or, fact is, the next year came around, and OPI was gone, so we never had to take it. So maybe he had some inside track, you know, and why put the ship through that if he didn't have to. I kind of wonder about that, but, you know, smooth on him if that is the case. But we still have stuff to do. We taking a historic trip to Vladivostok, Russia. Me and Brett talked about that quite a bit on the last one. This will be my first of 2 trips, but I give a little more detail what happened there. And then after that we also talked about it a bit. The exercise we did in Korea, the time called Ulchi Focus Lens, which is now something different, but it is every summer without fail in the 7th Fleet, you know, you do Ulchi Focus Lens. Or whatever the name of it. I think they've changed names a couple times now, but, you know, that was kind of my summer, you know, after I think we had like a 2-month, after Guam, maybe a month break before, like, we didn't really get a lot of summer off. Like, the ship ended up, its longest period, you know, kind of in stasis was, we did have a long fall rehabilitation. So now that thinking back on it, compared to the other years I was there, there essentially was no spring, summer kind of break as the ship would usually got. And this is part of it. We ended up going to Russia. We weren't the first ship there, American ship, to go there. The Fife, like 2 years before us, I believe, had been the first ship in. We were the second. This was part of like the anniversary of the Russian Navy, so there's a bunch of other navies there too. China, I want to say Australia, Thailand, and probably some others from, you know, the very east side of Russia. And the first day I went out, I was with Jackie, Kevin Carpenter, and I don't forget who the 4th guy was. I don't remember it being Ray, which would have made sense to the rest of the horsemen. And I doubt it was Sam because he never left the boat, so it wasn't that horseman. So it must have been some random guy who I don't remember. But it was kind of interesting. You know, we had to be in groups of 4 in our whites. The whites was for our protection, actually, as a detriment, because word was put out through the mafia and the cops, don't mess with the people in the white uniforms and make us look bad, or everybody's going to get shit on. So, yeah, that's kind of how we avoided getting mugged and raped and pillaged in the streets. It was really the government edict kind of, when working with the mob, kind of over blanketed us. So we're walking around, just a goofy bunch of sailors in white, and there's little kids trying to trade you trinkets or ask for autographs, which was weird. And, asking for cigarettes and beer, and they're like, 8. And you see them smoking, and it was, there's kind of all European-y street urchins, basically. We put up before, about Chief Gilchrist, and told that story. But the one story that first day that Brett wasn't there for was he was in another group with Chief Gilchrist. The first thing we were doing, we were kind of walking around, like more stopping in bars here and there, having a drink, usually feeling weird. And then there was like vodka vending machines, just like cans of vodka, like size like a Red Bull can. And like an orange juice boxes below that too, so you could chase it with a little orange juice box. They're kind of neat, so we were checking those out. Of course, checking the girls out. It's Eastern Russia, gorgeous women everywhere, and there was a fashion sense going on there. I don't know if I mentioned it before. They had like these mesh see-through tops and no bra under it. So basically, you're getting a full view. And boy, we just thought that was like the greatest fucking thing. And so it's kind of became, later on, you started meeting girls who were just kind of coming up to you. But I remember, like, that first day off the ship, that didn't quite seem to be happening yet. So we were going up, but people were nice enough, and we were going up and getting pictures of people. And there was this one woman that was just smoking fucking hot. And finally, we got Jackie to go up and get a picture with her. I was like, hey, and then he was going to, start macking on her or whatnot, see if she spoke English, if they're getting anywhere, blah, blah, blah. But he goes up to take the picture. I think Carpenter snaps the shot, and then he comes straight back and just says, let's go. And everyone's just like, Jackie, what the fuck? You didn't even try to talk to her. He's like, she stunk, bro. I mean, he said she smelled like he hadn't bathed in 3 weeks, and maybe she hadn't. But she was wearing really nice, fashionable clothes. It looked like her makeup and everything, hair was all good done. She was dolled up, looking nice, but I don't know if that's a European thing or just all our money went on that stuff and not towards soap. But yeah, he was having none of it. We ended up hanging out with some Russian dudes, and they just came. They spoke English and they wanted to talk to us. I think we met them in a bar. We ended up hanging out in a park drinking those vodkas as I had talked about. I think we were all pretty hammered by like 1 o'clock at that point. And a bit of a group. They stopped a couple of girls, made them kind of come over and talk to us. I have a vague memory that they weren't happy to do it, but they were just kind of being nice. And then a group of Chinese sailors came over. Of course, we don't speak Chinese. I think one of the Russians spoke a little bit, and one of the Chinese spoke a little Russian. But we're all partying, hanging around cans of vodka. They had them as well. Like they were, the Chinese sailors were definitely ready to throw down and party. So yeah, we're all having there, and then one dude wasn't having it. Like one of the Russian dudes just fucking hated Chinese. I don't know if it was personal or just because it's the way he was raised, but he wanted nothing to fucking do with them. And he kind of just sat off to the side of our little group there for, however long we were there, 45 minutes, an hour, just refusing to engage. I thought that was an interesting look into East Asia politics. And, I don't quite remember the rest of the evening. I'm pretty sure we were hammered by that point. And second day, I couldn't find anybody that I knew. I'm still fairly new to the ship, too, at this point, so I ended up going out with like these three more senior guys, like E5s and E6s. It's kind of one thing about the navies. We, the line is kind of vague between E1 and E6, and all the other services are very much more divided onto the E3, E4, E5, and E6 levels, and you can't really mix almost anywhere in there. But in the Navy, it's kind of murky between E1 through E6, and the only real cutoff is officers and chiefs. So, But it was interesting. I mean, it kind of, cause I could definitely tell the guys were a lot older, and so I still at that, kind of had that kid in me. Anybody's got a bit of age on you, you kind of look at them with respect, and they're adults, and I still feel like a kid at this point playing adult. But hanging out with them and just hearing them talk like everyone else I knew practically, except they did a lot more. They talked a lot more about work and specifics of their job and less bitching. Although there still was bitching about work, of course. And talking about getting girls and doing this and telling lewd jokes, and it's like these guys are late 20s, 30s, and I'm just like, wow. It's kind of. I mean, I hung out with Lo my first night, but it was just no reinforcement. It's like, this adulting isn't exactly what I thought it would be. It made me. I think it made me feel more secure as a grown person at this point, and made me feel less like a kid too. That was just kind of faking it till he made it. The only thing that really, I think one of them got kind of pissed off at me because it came out I was 19. And I have no idea what the actual age of drinking in Russia was, but they said 20, like it was back in Japan. And, one of the guys was just mad because, if I got in trouble, it'd be on his head. I think he was a senior guy in the party. I think he was a first class. So, I remember him kind of being sour on me the rest of the day. That happened fairly late in the day, though. So, but yeah, kind of soured the mood. Third day I had duty, which normally wouldn't be remarkable, but... remember, I scammed out and somehow got, I didn't get stuck with tour guides because that's, you're on a ship, you pull in, they invite people on board, and, the duty section provides bodies to guide them around or just stand in spots like human arrows. And eventually you just get asked a lot of questions, and it's just full of junior guys who don't know anything. Having to run tour guides myself on later ships, I can tell you, it's annoying because they don't want to. They want to supply the easiest bodies to get to tour guys, and it's like, well, these guys don't know anything, and of course we never did, and I just make shit up, because they're other than the main deck, and they'd be asking about the various radars and antennas and the big golf ball looking thing, which I think I told one people we held our soccer balls in, said we had missiles in there. We used to make up all sorts of shit. I had no idea what that fucking thing was. Some kind of radar. I think it's kind of unique to the Blue Ridge and Mount Whitney, but I could be wrong. But, I had lighting detail, which was, one of the skatest, if not the skatest job to get. It's just, at sunset, you go up to the flight deck, or the main deck, and you plug the lights on when, during, colors, or taps, and then in the morning you get up at, whatever sunrise is supposed to be, and you go unplug them. So, the worst things that happen to you might miss, half an hour of sleep, having to get up to go plug them in, so... was never a big deal. But they called us in the middle of the afternoon. We're like, what the hell? Because we knew it was, the sunset was real late, almost 11 because we were so far north. What the fuck are they calling us for now? And it was crowd control because helping out they already had the tour guys down there. Basically, they shut down, they'd advertised they're closing at 4, they shut down at 4, and a shit ton of people came after 4 and are fucking pissed. And they're just kind of surrounding the ship. They're not dispersing. There's no fucking Russian cops anywhere to be found. I see some of the more senior guys running around trying to get it. They basically kind of make us form a human shield while, the PAO is trying to talk to them. And he has, I think there was a Marine translator guy there. He was, I think, repeating stuff in Russian. And eventually, somewhere the word got to somebody, and it came back down to reopen tour guides for, another hour and a half. So, but it was scary. People were brushing up against us, and we're trying to hold hands and, not let them through a certain line. And, it was getting hairy. But, luckily it all worked out at the end. Last day I went out with, my friend Humphrey. I forgot to mention, he showed up. Weird guy, Humphrey. Just, he said he was a former Marine, but he was only in for a little while. He got out because of a contract snafu. It's always sounded kind of bullshitty. Then he would talk about having a dad or uncle for an admiral. That also sounded. The guy just whiffed bullshit, but as far as I can tell, it was true. He showed up there. He'd already left. He left a couple of weeks before I did from A school. As an SK, and he shows up. I was like, "What the hell are you showing up just now for?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't." I said, "Fuck that! I want to be an SK." So I called my uncle, and he got me PCA school. Sure enough, the motherfucker was somehow between going on leave, and I saw him the day he left from SKA school to whatever his duty station is supposed to be. He got rerouted to a new A school and ended up on the Blue Ridge with me. So I guess the guy wasn't bullshitting, but boy, it sure sounded like a load. But I went out with him. A guy I worked with, Gettleson, and I believe Honeycutt. And Gettleson was a lithographer, printer type. And Honeycutt was a personnelman. I talked a little bit about him before, especially his adventure in Thailand. But yeah, like we ended up with like did the same thing, hanging around, drinking, trying to find places with decent food. The food fucking sucked most of the time we were there. But of course, meeting girls, which was entertaining. And the last group we met, I think two of the girls were really into two of our friends, Humphrey, and I think Honeycutt, and I think Gettleson's girl was just kind of going along because her friends were. But the fourth girl, however, no interest in me, which made me feel like the fun man out of the group. And I can't, she's being almost polite, but definitely not wanting any fucking dealings with me. And her friends are kind of dragging her along with it, and it was it just made it for a fucking awkward time. And I was 19 and looked all of it, and she looked around late 20s, early 30s. It was basically some of the little I got out of her was like, you look like a kid. So fair enough point. And I think Humphrey, living up to his good old nickname Hump, went out and humped in the bushes at one point. And we were waiting on him. I know we got pretty close to the time that we had. It was Midnight Liberty every night, regardless of rank. So that one didn't sting as much. But it's before we all left them, like they all met us right at the pier. It was like 11:57. I'm like, yeah, come on. And they're like, oh, we do this thing. We're gonna give everybody give them all our white hats. And I was like, normally when it wasn't about losing the white hat, because whatever. Like I said, they were cheap. The girls lost one's a bigger deal. Some girl had one like stolen off her head, and like a bunch of Russians chased him down and beat the shit out of the guy. He brought it back because she just got done telling him like how expensive her hat was. That's hilarious. But yeah, and I was like, this girl, didn't really have a good time with this girl. Nothing to fucking do with me. And I was just like, okay, kind of a cold bitch, whatever. And I didn't really want to give her my fucking white hat, just on principle, but I ended up doing it just not to look like a fucking tool or coolest boot camper that I was. And but overall, yeah, it was a blast. It was just meeting girls, a lot of drinking, seeing just a weird culture, trading weird trinkets. I came up with so many Russian trinket things. I don't even know what I traded them for. And losing, other than the last little sour business of losing my white hat, I don't really to complain about it. Definitely a big memory. That's going to do it for this Tales from the Fleet. I think next time I will talk about good old ultra-focus lens and, probably the shittiest deployment or mini deployment that I ever had on the Blue Ridge. So that's going to do it for the Salty Seaman. I'll catch you freaks later. Peace.